This is the story of a rancher's daughter, a Comanche warrior, and a choice that changed everything. You won't believe what happened when she spoke the one language no one expected. Listen close, because the sun was blazing down on the Texas plains in 1875, just outside Fort Griffin. Dust everywhere, baking the earth. This is where Thomas Ward had his ranch, a simple life built from nothing after the war. 5 years of sweat and grit. And at the heart of it was his daughter, Eleanor. She was 20, sharp as a tack, and essential to the ranch. But here's the kicker. Eleanor wasn't like the other women. She'd lost her mother young, she worked the land, and her father insisted on education. He brought tutors from the East. That's the setup. But it's the language that matters. See, Eleanor had a gift for it. She'd even spent time with a missionary couple who'd lived with the Comanche. They taught her their tongue. Thomas, her father, was starting to regret that decision daily. "Pa," Eleanor called out, riding in on her chestnut mare. "The eastern fence needs mending." She was tough, sun-kissed, all business. Thomas wiped his brow, his eyes glued to the horizon. "I'll see to it tomorrow, Ellie. No more riding out alone. Raids are up." She sighed. "Pa, I know the land." "It's not the land," he growled, the concern heavy in his voice. "It's who's on it." And that's when the dust cloud appeared. One of their ranch hands came galloping in, shouting, "Mr. Ward, Comanche warriors spotted, maybe a dozen." Thomas's face turned to stone. "Get inside, Eleanor, now." But Eleanor stood her ground. "I can shoot. You know I can." "This is not a discussion," he roared, already grabbing his rifle. He called to the ranch hands, "Prepare to defend the homestead." The next hour was a blur of frantic preparation. Rifles loaded, men positioned. Thomas locked Eleanor in the house, but she wasn't having it. She was at a window with her own rifle, ready. The attack hit like a lightning strike. War cries, gunfire, the acrid smell of gunpowder filling the air. Thomas and his men fought hard, but they were outnumbered. Eleanor aimed, not wanting to kill, just protect her home. She saw a warrior fall from his horse after her shot. A rush of pride, immediately followed by a wave of sorrow. This was frontier life in its brutal truth. Then came the first twist. The battle seemed to be turning. Maybe they could hold them off, when Eleanor heard glass shatter at the back of the house. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She raced toward the sound. Standing right there, inside her home, was a tall, imposing Comanche warrior. Fierce eyes, red paint streaking his cheekbones. Before she could even raise her rifle, he knocked it away. He seized her in an iron grip. "Let go of me!" she cried out, struggling, pure terror flooding her. And here's the shocking part. The warrior's eyes widened. A flicker of recognition crossed his face when she spoke English. He didn't say a word, just dragged her toward the back door. Outside, another warrior waited with a spare horse. In seconds, despite her thrashing resistance, Eleanor was lifted onto the horse, her hands bound tight to the saddle. The last thing she saw was her father, Thomas, emerging from behind a water trough, horror etched onto his face, screaming her name into the dust. And then they were gone. They rode hard for hours, deeper into territory Eleanor had never seen. There were 5 men, and the warrior who took her was clearly the leader. Younger, maybe late 20s, but with a commanding presence. When they finally stopped at dusk to make camp, Eleanor knew she had to try something. She had to use her one impossible advantage. The leader approached, offering her a water skin. As he did, she spoke. Not English, not a scream, but in careful, clear Comanche. "Why have you taken me?" The man's eyes went wide. That was it. He was surprised, maybe even stunned. After a long, tense pause, he responded, in the same language. "You speak the words of my people." "I learned from those who lived among you," she replied, her heart pounding, but her pronunciation perfect. He studied her with new, intense interest. "I am Swifthawk, son of Standing Bear. Your men killed my brother in a raid last moon. Now, we will trade you for our warriors held at the fort." The terrible, chilling truth bloomed in her mind. This wasn't senseless violence. This was exchange. This was a trade for life. "I am Eleanor Ward," she said, swallowing hard. "My father will come for me." "Yes," Swift confirmed, his expression unreadable. "That is what we count on." As night fell, Eleanor sat against a tree, her hands mercifully tied in front of her now, a small reprieve. She watched Swift talk with the other warriors. She noticed the dignity in his bearing, completely at odds with the savage stories she'd heard all her life. This knowledge, this secret language, was her only edge. Tomorrow would bring the real crisis. But for tonight, she was an observer. And Swift seemed genuinely intrigued. Dawn broke, painting the sky with pink and gold. But Eleanor barely slept. Her body ached. She noticed Swift was already awake, watching the horizon with an intense focus. "We ride soon," he said in Comanche when he saw her stir. "There is food." Another warrior brought her dried meat and corn mush. She accepted it with a nod, maintaining her dignity. As she ate, she watched them. No, these weren't the mindless killers of frontier tales. They moved with purpose, efficiency. Then came the next beat. "Your people have stories about mine," Swift said, sitting across from her. "They say, we are animals who kill without reason." Eleanor met his gaze. "And your people have stories about mine, that we are greedy, that we break every promise." A hint of surprise flickered across his face. "You speak truth when many would not." "What good would lies do me now?" she countered, the simplest truth being the most powerful. He drilled her with a question that felt personal. "Why would you want to learn?" She took a sip of water, carefully choosing her words. "I believe understanding begins with language." She paused. "My father says I'm too curious for my own good." Swift expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. A crack in the wall. A recognition. They broke camp quickly, riding deeper into territory white settlers never saw. Eleanor, the clever rancher's daughter, silently mapped their journey, landmark by landmark. She was already planning an escape, even if it was just a remote hope. By midday, they reached a hidden valley. Eleanor's heart sank. This was no small raiding party's temporary stop. There were 30 lodges, a massive Comanche encampment. Any hope of a quick rescue faded instantly. Their arrival caused a stir. People came out staring at the white woman. An older man approached, long gray hair, regal bearing, penetrating gaze. The chief, Standing Bear, Swift father. They spoke in rapid Comanche, too fast for her to catch everything, but she heard the keywords: trade, fort, warriors. Standing Bear turned his dark, assessing eyes on her. "You are the rancher's daughter," he said in halting English. "Your father is important man." "My father is Thomas Ward," Eleanor said, straightening her shoulders. "He is respected." Swift interjected in Comanche. "She speaks our language, father." Standing Bear's eyebrows shot up. He switched back to his native tongue. "Is this true, daughter of Ward?" "Yes," Eleanor replied in Comanche. "I learned from those who lived among your people." A visible murmur ran through the crowd. This was no ordinary hostage. "You will stay in my son's lodge until arrangements are made," Standing Bear commanded. Swift led her to a teepee, simple but comfortable. He untied her hands, but his voice was iron. "I will post a guard. Do not try to leave." "Where would I go?" Eleanor asked reasonably. "I don't even know where we are." Respect flickered across his face again. "You are wise not to run foolishly to your death." "Many of my people haven't spent years learning to understand yours," she countered. "Understanding does not seem to be common between our peoples," he noted. "No," Eleanor agreed softly. "It doesn't." He left, securing the entrance. Eleanor sank onto a buffalo robe. She was in the heart of the enemy camp, but now a subtle, dangerous thought took hold. She was questioning the simplicity of the narratives she'd grown up with. These were people with families. Swift was not a savage. He was a man defending his own, A young woman brought her food. Eleanor thanked her in Comanche, earning a shy smile. Later, Swifthawk returned with his aunt, who brought blankets. "My aunt," he explained. "She says the nights grow cold." Eleanor thanked the woman gratefully. The aunt gave a strange, meaningful look between Eleanor and Swifthawk before leaving. What did that look mean? "Your people will be contacted tomorrow," Swifthawk informed her, switching to English. "A message will be sent." "Will they hurt my father?" she asked, the fear finally showing. His expression softened slightly. "No harm if they agree to trade. We want our brothers back, not more blood." That night, Eleanor listened to the sounds of life in the camp. Children laughing, a distant drumbeat. Her fear was giving way to an intense curiosity. She was wondering about Swifthawk's life and what had shaped him. 3 days passed. The guard was less vigilant. Eleanor was allowed to walk the camp, though always watched. Her interactions with Swifthawk were growing frequent. They were no longer simply captor and prisoner. This morning, she sat outside the teepee, watching the children play. It was ordinary, familiar. "You watch us like you are learning our ways," Swifthawk said, approaching with 2 bowls of stew. "I am," Eleanor replied, taking a bowl. "There's much I didn't know." "What surprises you most?" She paused, tasting the stew. "How ordinary it all is. Different, yes, but the concerns are the same. Food, shelter, family, safety." He weighed her words. "Yet your people believe we are savages who think only of bloodshed. And your people believe all whites are greedy thieves who care nothing for the land," she countered gently. "Neither is entirely true, is it?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Perhaps not." They ate in silence. Then Eleanor asked the crucial question. "Has word been sent to the fort?" His expression darkened. "Yes, 2 days ago. We await their response." "And if they refuse the exchange?" "Then the council will decide," he said too simply. She understood the implication. Her value as a hostage was tied to the negotiation. If it failed, her fate was uncertain. "Tell me of your life before." Swifthawk suddenly shifted the subject. She told him of her mother's death, her father's determination, her refusal to go east. "The ranch is my home. I couldn't leave him alone." He nodded. "Family bonds are strong." Then it was her turn. "Tell me of your family. You mentioned a brother who was killed." The pain flashed across Swifthawk's face, raw and visible. "Running Fox. He was younger, gentler, better with horses than weapons. He went on the raid to prove himself to our father." His voice hardened. "He should not have died." "No one should die in these conflicts," Eleanor said softly. "Not your brother, not the settlers." Swifthawk stared at her, genuinely surprised. "You believe this truly?" "I do," she affirmed. "There must be a better way than endless bloodshed." Their conversation was ripped apart by a sudden commotion. A rider had arrived. Important news. Swifthawk leaped up and strode toward the gathering crowd. Eleanor watched, stomach twisting, as he conferred with the messenger and his father. Their faces were grave. Something had gone wrong. He walked back toward her, his face a mask of controlled anger. "What is it?" she asked. "The fort commander refuses to release our warriors," he said tersely. "He says they are raiders who will be tried under white man's law." Eleanor's heart plummeted. "And me?" Swifthawk's eyes softened slightly. "The council will meet tonight to decide. My father argues for your continued safety as leverage. Others are not so patient." Fear washed over her, but she kept her composure. "What do you argue for?" He held her gaze for a long, heavy moment. "I have not decided." That night, she listened to the muffled voices of the council. Her life was being determined by people she now saw as tragically human, caught in a cycle of vengeance. Hours later, Swifthawk returned. "What was decided?" she asked, rising. "You will remain here for now," he said. "Another message will be sent with greater urgency." "What does greater urgency mean?" Swifthawk sighed, looking weary. "It means threats will be made. Threats I hope we do not have to fulfill." You don't want more violence, she observed. No, he admitted. I have seen enough death. But he met her eyes directly. I told the council of your respect for our ways, your knowledge of our language. It helped sway those who called for harsher measures. Thank you, Eleanor said softly. An unspoken tension, a dangerous bond hung between them. Tomorrow, Swifthawk said just before he left, I will show you something. Be ready at dawn. A mixture of dread and anticipation filled her. What did he want to show her? What was he planning? The next morning, they rode. Just the two of them, leaving the camp, heading west into the rolling hills. They rode for an hour in silence until Swifthawk slowed his horse near a small stream bordered by cottonwood trees. This place, he said as they dismounted, was sacred to my grandmother's people. She brought me here as a child. It's beautiful, Eleanor said, looking at the peaceful stream. He led her to a large, flat rock. Sit. I must tell you something. Her heart hammered. She sat. Swifthawk settled beside her, his gaze distant. My father and the others believe you are merely a trade piece, he began. A white woman to exchange for our warriors. He turned to face her. But I see more. What do you see? Eleanor asked, barely above a whisper. A bridge, he said simply. Someone who might help our peoples understand one another, as you have begun to understand us. Hope sparked, dangerous and bright. Is that possible? It is dangerous to hope for such things in these times, he said, his expression serious. But I find myself hoping nonetheless. Then he dropped the true twist. If the exchange fails, there will be those who demand your life as payment. And you? Eleanor searched his face. What would you demand? Your safety, he said quietly, though I may not be able to guarantee it. The weight of his words, and the implicit trust in them, was staggering. She was no longer just a prisoner. Their eyes held. Swifthawk looked away, gesturing to the stream. My grandmother said, water carries messages to the spirits. Perhaps it will carry ours for peace. As they sat by the sacred stream, Eleanor felt a profound shift. They were complicated now. Far more meaningful than captor and prisoner. They were two people trapped between two worlds. The seventh day dawned with an agonizing tension. The second message, the ultimatum, had been delivered. Release the warriors, or face consequences. Eleanor knew her life was the price. Warriors were preparing weapons. Faces were grim. Swifthawk approached. They prepare for battle, Eleanor observed. Yes, he agreed, his voice heavy. If no response comes by midday, a party will ride to a settlement near the fort, to show our resolve. Eleanor's heart sank. More lives at risk. A path neither of us wishes to follow. Their connection had deepened to a terrifying degree. They had talked for hours, sharing dreams. Swifthawk wanted a future where his people could maintain their ways. Come, he said suddenly. Walk with me. They moved away from the busy camp. When they were alone, Swifthawk turned, his voice low and urgent. I have been thinking through the night. There may be another way. What way? Hope flared. You, he said simply. Your understanding of both worlds. If you could speak to the fort commander, explain that further bloodshed serves neither side. You would let me go? Eleanor asked, stunned. Not alone, he corrected. I would go with you under a flag of truce. Eleanor stared. That would be extremely dangerous for you. Yes, he acknowledged. But I believe you would ensure my safe return, as I have ensured your safety here. I would, she promised, moved by the depth of his trust. But your father? The council? My father might be persuaded, Swifthawk admitted. Others will resist. Then came the shocking reveal that changed the timeline. Scouts reported yesterday that your father leads a large party of men searching for you. They are perhaps 2 days' ride from here. Eleanor gasped. Joy, then terror. If they find this camp, Swifthawk finished grimly, there would be much bloodshed, which is why we must act now before they arrive. The plan snapped into place. Swift Hawk would convince Standing Bear this was the last best chance for peace. They would leave immediately, hoping to reach the fort before Thomas Ward's search party found the camp. "I must speak with my father now," Swift Hawk said. "Prepare yourself for travel. If he agrees, we leave within the hour." Standing Bear was a wall of resistance. Eleanor listened to the heated argument, father and son, then other warriors joining in, vehemently opposing the risk. But Swift Hawk was resolute. He kept glancing at Eleanor, his determination fierce. Finally, Standing Bear raised his hand for silence. He spoke a few grave words. Swift Hawk returned to Eleanor. "He has agreed," he said, relief flooding his voice. "But we go with 2 warriors as escorts, and if there is any sign of treachery, they are to ensure neither of us returns to betray the location of the camp." Eleanor nodded, the implied threat chilling, but necessary. "There won't be treachery from me." "I know," Swift Hawk said softly, "or I would not risk this." Within the hour, they were riding toward Fort Griffin, Swift Hawk and Eleanor in the lead, carrying a makeshift white flag, a shawl tied to a branch. 2 stern-faced warriors flanked them. They talked logistics, what to say to the commander, how to sell the peace. But underneath it, the unspoken emotion was a current, a recognition that this was a reckless, profound turning point. "If we succeed," Eleanor said, pausing to rest the horses at midday, "what happens afterward?" Swift Hawk looked distant. "My people will seek a way to live. Your father will take you home to your ranch." "And you?" she pressed gently. He looked at her, his expression softening. "I will remember the woman who spoke my language and saw my people as people, not savages." "Is that all?" Her heart quickened. He hesitated. "What more could there be in such times as these?" "Perhaps more than either of us dared imagine when you first brought me to your camp," she challenged him. Before he could answer, one of the escort warriors called out, pointing to a dust cloud on the horizon. Swift Hawk tensed. "Riders," he said grimly. "Many of them, moving quickly." Eleanor's breath caught. Her father, or the soldiers. "We must move faster," Swift Hawk urged. "If they see us before understanding our purpose, they will shoot." They galloped hard, the white flag flapping, racing toward a rise in the land. They had to reach high ground, so the flag was unmistakable. They crested the hill just as the riders came into clearer view. Eleanor saw her father, Thomas Ward, tall and grim, at the head of 20 men. They hadn't spotted the small 4-person party yet. "There," she pointed. "My father leads them." "We will remain here on high ground," Swift Hawk said, quickly assessing the danger. "When they see us, I will raise the flag. You must call out to your father before his men decide to shoot." The search party drew nearer, then halted as one of the men pointed toward them. Thomas shaded his eyes, trying to identify the figures. "Now!" Swift Hawk commanded, raising the white flag high. Eleanor stood in her stirrups and screamed over the distance. "Pa! It's me, Eleanor! Don't shoot!" A moment of gut-wrenching suspense followed. Thomas conferred quickly with his men. Then, in an act of incredible, desperate trust, he separated from the group and rode forward, alone. His rifle was visible, but not raised. "He comes," Eleanor whispered, relief almost making her dizzy. "As it should be," Swift Hawk agreed. "I will go with you to meet him halfway." They rode down the slope slowly, the white flag raised. Thomas Ward's face was a mixture of utter relief and utter bewilderment, seeing his unharmed daughter next to a Comanche warrior. "Eleanor," he called, his voice thick with emotion. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine, Pa," she assured him, stopping her horse several yards from his. Swift Hawk stopped beside her. He looked at Thomas Ward, the man who wanted him dead, and spoke in clear, formal English. "I am Swift Hawk. I bring your daughter home, not for bloodshed, but for peace." And that's where the next wave of twists began. Thomas Ward, a hardened veteran of the frontier, stood stunned. This warrior, Swift Hawk, was speaking perfect, unaccented English. "You speak my language?" Thomas finally managed, his hand instinctively resting on his holstered pistol. "Yes," Swift Hawk replied, holding Thomas's gaze without flinching, "as your daughter speaks mine." Thomas looked from Swift Hawk to Eleanor, his mind reeling. Ellie, what is this? He saved my life, Pa, she said urgently. He wants to negotiate an end to the fighting. He wants to trade the lives of his captured warriors for the safety of everyone here. The fort commander refused the trade, Swifthawk interjected. But we offer a chance to stop a war party from riding out tonight. We came under a flag of truce. I am risking my life on your daughter's word. Thomas Ward saw the raw truth in the Comanche's eyes. This wasn't a trick. This was a man standing in the space between two raging fires. My men are behind me, Thomas warned, nodding to his waiting search party. If you make one wrong move... I have 2 of my best warriors behind me, instructed to kill me if they suspect treachery, Swifthawk countered, raising the stakes. We are all risking much, Ward. My life is the guarantee of your daughter's sincerity. Thomas, a man who understood a bargain when he heard one, slowly removed his hand from his pistol. What is your proposal? We ride to the fort, all 4 of us. Eleanor and I will speak to the commander together. She will tell him of our people, and I will offer a binding treaty, an exchange of the prisoners for a guaranteed zone of peace around your ranch. Eleanor added, It's the only way, Pa. If they don't get a resolution, they will retaliate. He's trying to prevent it. Thomas wrestled with the impossible choice, his desire for revenge for the raids versus the shocking prospect of real peace. What makes you think the commander will listen to a Comanche and a girl? He will listen to his daughter, Swifthawk corrected, a sliver of respect in his voice. And he will listen to the one Comanche who offered him his life, not a battle. Thomas took a deep, shuddering breath. He looked at his daughter, unharmed, brave, standing up for a dangerous peace. He saw the trust between them. He made the only choice a father could. All right, he said, the word heavy with consequence. We ride to the fort, together. The ride to Fort Griffin was agonizing. Thomas, Eleanor, Swifthawk, and his 2 escorts, plus Thomas's search party following cautiously, a few hundred yards back. It was a bizarre, tense procession. Eleanor and Swifthawk rode side by side, quickly briefing her father. They explained the full context, the death of Running Fox, the Comanche's need for their captured kin, the council's division, and the immense risk Swifthawk had taken. You really learned their language from missionaries? Thomas asked Eleanor, shaking his head in disbelief. Yes, Pa. And it was the only reason I survived. As they neared the fort, the tension became unbearable. Sentries spotted the strange group. A white man, a white woman, and 3 armed Comanche warriors flying a white flag. The fort gates opened, but soldiers poured out, rifles raised. Halt! The fort commander, a rigid, severe man named Colonel Hayes, bellowed. Ward, what is the meaning of this madness? Get your daughter away from that savage! Thomas rode forward, holding up a hand to stop the soldiers. Colonel, stand down! This is a peace parley. The girl is safe! Hayes was apoplectic. Safe? She's with a raider! Arrest them all! Eleanor, seeing the seconds ticking down to bloodshed, spurred her horse forward, positioning herself between the soldiers and Swifthawk. Colonel Hayes, stop! She cried out. I was taken as a trade piece, not a victim. Swifthawk came here willingly under a flag of truce to prevent a war party from riding out tonight. Hayes hesitated, utterly confused. Swifthawk held the white flag high and spoke, his English ringing out clearly. I am here to offer a treaty that saves lives, starting with the 24 settlers in the next valley who would be targeted by my people if your prisoners are not released. The threat was clear, precise, and immediate. The settlers gasped. Colonel Hayes's face went white. Hayes motioned for them to be disarmed and brought inside. The negotiations took place in the colonel's small, stuffy office. Thomas and Eleanor sat on one side. Swifthawk and one of his escorts, who remained silent, stood on the other. Colonel Hayes and his second-in-command faced them. Hayes was hostile from the start. You think you can ride in here and dictate terms, savage? I speak of peace, Swifthawk replied, calm and steady. You speak of revenge. Revenge will cost you lives you cannot afford to lose. Eleanor intervened, using all the logic she had learned from Swifthawk. Colonel, I lived with them. They are people, not monsters. They lost a brother, Running Fox, to a raid that went wrong. This is about family, Colonel. They will not stop until their brothers are returned. She then delivered the crucial blow, the next twist. And if you try to take Swift Hawk prisoner, you will never find their camp. You will have guaranteed that the next war party will ride out immediately, and they will take their revenge on the nearest settlement, which you know is undefended. Hayes slammed his hand on the desk. This is blackmail. It is reality, Swift Hawk said simply. A life for a life is the only currency my people trust. I offer a trade for peace, the freedom of my warriors, for a guaranteed zone of peace around the Ward Ranch, and the promise of no further raids from Standing Bear's band. Thomas, seeing his chance, jumped in. Colonel, I trust my daughter's judgment. She's seen inside their world. This man is sincere. If you let him go back with his brothers, he can enforce the peace. If you hang him, you create a martyr and a blood feud that will cost hundreds of lives. Hayes wrestled with it. He was a man of law, but the threat to the nearby settlement was real and immediate. He looked at Eleanor, the innocent hostage who had become a negotiator. He looked at Swift Hawk, the warrior who was gambling his life on peace. Finally, grudgingly, Hayes capitulated. I will release your warriors, he bid out. But you must promise a meeting between your chief and representatives from the fort within 1 month to formalize this treaty. And if one white settler is harmed in the meantime, I will hunt you and your band down myself. Agreed, Swift Hawk said, his face impassive. 1 month. The Comanche word is as solid as your own. The warriors were released. It was a tense, silent exchange in the fort's main yard. Swift Hawk's men, gaunt but alive, looked stunned to see their leader. Eleanor and Thomas watched as Swift Hawk reunited with them. Before they left, Swift Hawk approached Eleanor. You risked everything for me, he said, his voice low, private, and in Comanche. You risked everything for peace, she countered. He reached out and gently took her hands in his. Your heart is stronger than any rifle, Eleanor Ward. Your father is fortunate. Thomas Ward walked up, standing just close enough to hear. He was still processing the full scope of the past week. I thank you, Swift Hawk, Thomas said, his voice gruff with genuine respect. For my daughter's life. She is a bridge, Swift Hawk repeated, looking Thomas straight in the eye. And I hope you do not burn it. He mounted his horse. Then he did the final, stunning thing. He paused, looked back at Eleanor, and gave her a single, sharp nod of respect, a promise of the future. And then he led his men out of Fort Griffin, riding back into the territory that was now, finally, a zone of uneasy, fragile peace. Eleanor returned home with her father. The ranch was safe, the men cheered, but everything had changed. In the weeks that followed, Thomas Ward became a different man. He spoke of the Comanche with grudging respect, not hate. He began clearing the land further away from the Comanche hunting grounds, respecting the new, unspoken boundary. The meeting with Standing Bear, as promised, took place a month later. Colonel Hayes, Thomas Ward, and Eleanor, the essential bridge, met Swift Hawk and his father, Standing Bear, at the sacred stream. Eleanor, speaking both languages, mediated the first ever formal treaty between the two parties. The peace was solidified, land was set aside, trade routes were agreed upon, and a promise was made to respect the lives on both sides. Thomas Ward, the pragmatic rancher, stood beside his daughter, his rifle no longer a weapon of war, but a symbol of his responsibility to the peace she had created. The story ends not with a fight, but with a handshake. The warrior returned home a hero, the daughter returned home a legend. The language she learned, the curiosity her father questioned, saved not just her life, but the lives of 24 men, and created a lasting, hard-won peace on the brutal frontier. It was the impossible bargain that saved them all. Eleanor Ward never left the ranch, but she became the most important diplomat on the Texas plains. She continued her conversations with Swift Hawk, sometimes in person, always with the shared goal of protecting the fragile, precious bridge they had built. It was a story of a warrior, a captive, and the single, simple, shocking truth. The only way to win a war is to talk. If you were shocked by the twists in this true story of the Texas frontier, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment and let me know if you would have trusted Swift Hawk. I'll see you in the comments section.